in the crowded Electric Avenue Market. Weaving amongst the bustling crowd was 22-year-old David Copeland. He'd left his home in Sunnybank Road with a sports bag over his shoulder and headed for Brixton. The bag contained a bomb. The bomb contained 2 pounds of explosive and over 1,500 nails. Copeland left the bag near a bus stop, but a passerby moved it further into the market. The bag ended up under Gary Schilling's fruit and veg stall.
Got told there's a bag under the stall, so I bent down and had a look inside it. A black holdall bag with a sandwich lunchbox in it, with a clock in another box and sellotape to it, with nails in the bottom one, and wires and ticking.
Gary moved the bag to one side, not realizing what was about to happen. Over 1,500 nails were flung like bullets across the market area. Kelly Panda remembers that day.
When the bomb was exploded, my stall was moved, shake up like an earthquake. There was a lot of blood. One lady was there. One lady was there.
More than 30 people were injured by nails flying in all directions.
I still get a memory of bomb. There was a nail there, nail there, nail there, nails everywhere. One is there. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there. There was a very, very bad scene.
Because of its location, the police suspected that the attack was racial. And exactly 1 week later, their suspicions were confirmed when another target was hit. On Saturday the 24th of April, David Copeland again left his suburban hideaway and made his way into London. This time, his hatred was directed towards the thriving multicultural community of Brick Lane in the East End.
Brick Lane, we call it Bangla Town. It's something like Chinatown. Although we call it Bangla Town, that means you may think that only the Bengali people there are living in this area, but that's not true. It's a really a multicultural society. If you go to Brick Lane or any day, any time, if you come, you can see a variety of people.
The security camera clearly shows Copeland moments before he carefully positioned the bag in a prominent location. But following Brixton, London was on alert, and a suspicious passerby put the bag into his car and warned the police. Before it could be defused, it exploded in the boot. Mdad witnessed the explosion.
Suddenly, at that time, we have seen or we have got this big blast, bomb blast from that side, just other side of the car. And within a moment we have seen that nice and bright weather that became cloudy. And the part of that car that was flying about 30-40 feet high in the air, the nails of that bomb that also attacked these windows, glasses, these walls, these parts, etc. And people came out from the shops. What happened? What's the matter? Why this big sound? And then everybody realized that it was a big bomb blast. Later on, I was treated by my GP, but my physical injury, that was not a bigger one. The bigger one was that mental attack, because the shock I got from this bomb is still it's a big nightmare for me.
But by now police were closing in. They'd released the footage of Copeland in Brixton, and a member of the public had recognized him. Copeland knew time was running out. Police tracked down Copeland's phone number in Farnborough, but he'd already decided to bring his next target forward by 24 hours. Early evening in Soho, Friday 30th of April, 1999. Hundreds of people flocked to Old Compton Street for after-work drinks and to meet friends for a Friday night out. Among the crowds is David Copeland. Courtier and security camera at 10 to 6. He makes his way into the heart of Soho with his trademark shoulder bag. His destination this time was the Admiral Duncan pub in Old Compton Street, one of the most popular gay bars in London. Gary Fellows was also making his way into Soho, looking forward to the weekend.
I would have left work at about 5:30. I was working in Whitehall at the time, so I made my way to the Admiral Duncan, which was my usual Friday night venue. It was a real sunny evening. It was the first really warm evening of the year. There was lots of people out in the street, outside cafes, drinking coffee and stuff.
At 6:15, the camera catches Copeland again. The bag is gone.
I was stood right at the back of the pub in front of the jukebox. I've just finished my drink and been introduced to a friend of a friend. I was thinking about going to the bar to get another drink, and thank God I didn't, because that was the moment that the bomb actually exploded. First thing I remember was a big blue flash. I didn't hear any kind of sound, any bang at all. I was probably too close to it, and suddenly the sound of things hitting the walls, hitting the ceilings. And the next thing I knew, it was just absolutely pitch black, and I was breathing in tons and tons of very thick sulphur smoke. The smoke gradually began to clear, and I saw the street at the end of this, what appeared to be a long tunnel. First thing I remember about the interior of the pub, it was just completely trashed. It was just charcoal. There was just absolutely stunned silence. And someone said to me, perhaps your hearing was gone. I said, no, I could hear my feet on the rubble, so I know I could hear. And I somehow just managed to stumble out into the street. There were people, injured people all over the pavement. The pavement was absolutely red with blood. It was a very horrific sight.
More than 500 nails were shot through the pub as the bomb exploded. This was the most devastating attack so far. 3 people were killed, and over 65 were injured by the blast. Copeland returned home to Farnborough, but the police weren't far behind. Following the tip-off, they arrived at Copeland's house the very next morning. He was arrested and charged. His motive? Pure hatred. For the victims of his campaign of hate, it's an experience that continues.
Early in the morning, while I get up and I remain alone, it comes in my mind. I think, although my wife, my daughter, my friends, whenever they are surrounding me, I can forget this. But when I'm with me, I'm alone, purely alone, then it's not possible to forget these things.
When I was actually chatting with my mates, one of them introduced me to a mate of his. I didn't know his name, and the bomb actually exploded just after I'd been introduced to him. And I can remember thinking later, I wonder what on earth happened to the chap I just met. So I spent the next couple of months wondering if he was okay. And then all of a sudden I was in the Duncan about a month after it reopened, and this chap just came walking in. And we just looked at each other as soon as he came through the door, and just like flung our arms around each other and just hugged for a while. I mean, we didn't know each other, but the fact that we'd been speaking at the moment of a bomb blast occurring, I think there'll always be a unique bond.
David Copeland was convicted of 3 counts of murder and of causing the 3 explosions. He received 6 life sentences. The judge said nothing could excuse the evil he'd done.
it's almost impossible to try and imagine someone so full of hate. Lots of people have prejudices against different things, but most people don't go around actually killing people. It's very hard to imagine someone being that consumed with hatred.
I've dealt with quite a lot of extortionists in my time. I would say Edgar Pierce was certainly with the most dangerous one I've dealt with. Not only because of what he actually did, but because of what he was going to do if we hadn't caught him when we did.
I was numb, like, when I found out it was a bomb. But to actually be told that I could have been torn to pieces, and, you know, that is when it really sort of like come home that I could have actually been killed.
Chiswick, West 4, one of the most desirable suburbs in London. But this well-to-do area was also home to one of the most prolific extortionists in modern history. From this quiet cul-de-sac, a 61-year-old man meticulously planned and executed a campaign of terror that was to last for 3.5 years and lead to one of the biggest police operations ever mounted in Britain. His name was Edgar Pierce, and he became known as the Mardi Gras bomber.
What we were dealing with was somebody who was out to make money. But at the same time, it was quite obvious that we were dealing with somebody who really was clever, who thought things through.
Neighbours must have thought Pierce was innocently pottering around his greenhouse, but in fact he was building an arsenal of weapons in his own backyard. 10 years earlier, Barclays Bank had refused Pierce a loan to save his ailing restaurant business, and now he wanted revenge. His plan was to settle his grudge against the bank by means of extortion.
Any extortion is itself difficult to deal with, but there was extra pressure here because the Mardi Gras bomber wasn't just making threats, he was carrying those threats through.
On the 6th of December 1994, staff at 6 branches of Barclays arrived at work to find packages like these in among the post. Wrapped in shiny Christmas wrapping paper, the distinctive parcels each had a label on the front with the words, "Welcome to the Mardi Gras experience." Inside the package was a homemade bomb.
The fact that he chose a large bank showed us that he was on a commercial venture and there didn't seem to be any kind of political motive involved.
A massive police hunt began. But Edgar Pierce had developed an extensive knowledge of forensics and so kept the police at bay.
Some of his improvised shotgun devices were mounted on wooden boards. Now, those boards had chamfered edges. The reason why he chamfered the edges of the boards was that he was concerned about cutting himself and possibly just with a very small cut and leaving a drop of blood for us to find, from which we would of course be able to get DNA.
Barclays refused to pay up, but Pierce wasn't deterred. He was playing a waiting game. Over the next 2 years he sent 19 devices to random locations in and around London. But they all had one thing in common. Each contained a clear reference to Barclays.
He was clever enough to know that the biggest thing he could do to prevent himself from being arrested was not to establish any kind of pattern to his behaviour. The Mardi Gras bomber concentrated his activities on 2 areas. Here out in West London and down here in Southeast London. And there were no devices going off in between. Eventually we were to establish that Pierce lived in West London, so that's why he was putting devices down there, but his ex-wife lived down in Southeast London. There's no amount of clever detective work or deduction could work that out.
In 1996, Neil Bradley was working as a road sweeper in and around Eltham, southeast London.
Just a general day up until we got up Eltham High Street, and we started clearing the high street. We'd come up from McDonald's, clearing the bags. We got up to Barclays Bank. Must have been about 6:30, 7:15. The actual bag that the bomb was in was sitting right there by the wall. I've picked this bag up, thrown it on the back, and I've heard metal. So I thought, strange. Looks in the bag, and there's a gas bottle, and I've noticed there's gas coming out of it. So I've turned it off, and noticed something shiny in the bottom of the bag. So I've got the bag, got that out, and to me it looked like a little amateur radio.
Initially, the devices were scary, but not really likely to harm people.
So I've given it to my driver, carried on up the road, gets to Woolworths, and he's pulled up sharp, jumped out the van, he's come running round the back, and he said to me, "Here, where did you find this?" I said, "With that gas bottle." He said, "Do you know what this is?" "No."
But gradually, we got to a stage where any device could kill.
He said, "It's a detonator." I ain't got a clue what you're talking about. He said, "Tick, tick, bang, bomb."
The Mardi Gras bomber had struck again.
We actually stopped, and we had to phone the police. 2 seconds later, we're surrounded by police. We was told to drive from here round to the police station. The bomb disposal fella turned around and said, "No," he said, "that could have really done some damage." He said it would have ripped the front out of Barclays Bank and done a lot of damage to the high street because of the container actually fragmenting, so bits would have been flying in all directions. No one would have been spared because it would have gone off just like a grenade. I mean, that's when it really hit home that I could have ended up being really seriously hurt or even killed.
Neil Bradley had unwittingly picked up the 23rd device left by the Mardi Gras bomber. His bombs were becoming more sophisticated and potentially lethal, but the police were no closer to finding him. With no forensic evidence and no witnesses, they trawled through hours of CCTV footage in their hunt for new leads.
Officers viewed hundreds of hours of videotapes taken in the areas where devices had gone off. They were looking for links between scenes. Not once did they establish a link. It was clear that the bomber had carried out a reconnaissance in each case so that he would know where the cameras were, he would know how to avoid those cameras.
Frustrated by Barclay's unwillingness to pay up, he changed tactic. He selected a new target, Sainsbury's supermarket.
The move to Sainsbury's for us was quite alarming because we were dealing clearly with somebody who was prepared to seriously injure random members of the public, and where easier to do that than Sainsbury's. There came a point where we had a lot of our own cameras hidden close to Sainsbury's stores. He, of course, would not be aware of those. And it was with one of those cameras that we finally caught the bomber on tape.
And that camera was in Eltham High Street.
Around 12 noon on a weekday, Pierce crossed Eltham High Street and put a black carrier bag down with a device inside opposite a bus stop. That was our first view of him. When I first saw this video, and this was the first time that we'd seen Pierce on film, my blood went cold because you can see just how callous he was being. In 3 minutes' time, that shotgun is going to go off.
The gun did go off. Luckily, no one was hurt. But it was Edgar Pierce's last bomb. The police finally decided to lure him out by offering him the money he so desperately wanted.
Pierce had come up with a plan to draw money out from cash point machines. We had to come up with a plan to counter what he intended to do. Unfortunately, our plan was better.
Pierce began to withdraw money from cash machines using an agreed PIN number. But unknown to him, his withdrawals were being traced by the bank's computers. And 1,000 police officers were positioned near cash points around London, waiting for Pierce to show. And when he did, they arrested him. On the 7th of April 1999, Edgar Pierce pleaded guilty to 20 charges, including blackmail, causing actual bodily harm, and possessing firearms and explosives. He was jailed for 21 years.
When I saw the arsenal of weapons at his house, I really was a relieved man, because it was then that it came home to us exactly what Pierce had in mind for the people of London. He'd caused quite a lot of panic before, but that was as nothing compared to the kind of panic that firing off crossbow bolts into crowds would cause.
It's been quite a while since I've been up here, but I always cross the road and walk up the other side of the road rather than walk past the bank. It's just an habit I've got into since it happened.